Hi students, this is Mr. Boyd, and here's another lesson in algebra. Today's topic is solving quadratic equations by factoring. So we learned in previous lessons how to factor a quadratic. Now we're going to use that to solve quadratic equations. So let's jump right in. So step one says to set the equation equal to 0. So we want this thing in standard form, and we want to set it equal to 0. So for this equation, we would rewrite this as x squared plus 3x minus 10 equals 0. And the reason we're doing that is we are looking for the zeros. And the zeros are also called x-intercepts. Where do we find the x-intercepts? Well, we find those where y equals 0. So we're going to substitute for 0, or substitute y into 0 to start with. Okay? Next step says to factor the left side. So if we go ahead and factor this, I'm not going to draw all this out for you again. But when we factor this, we would find out that this is x plus 5 times x minus 2. And next we're going to use what we call the zero product property. And the zero product property basically says that if you have two factors, let's call those a and b, and when you multiply those you get 0, then either the first factor or the second factor has to equal 0. So we know that just from normal everyday things, that in order to get a product of 0, one of the two numbers has to be 0, or both. Okay, so let's move on. So it says set each factor equal to 0 and solve each factor for x. So if I take this first factor right here, x plus 5, I'm going to set that equal to 0. Then I'm going to take the second factor and set it equal to 0. Next, I'm going to solve each of these equations. So the first one, I would subtract 5 from both sides. That's going to be x equals negative 5. Next, we'll solve the second equation. So we would add 2 to both sides. When we do that, we see that x could also have an answer of 2. Okay, so does that work? Well, let's see. If we put negative 5 in here, negative 5 squared would be 25. And if we put negative 5 in here, 3 times negative 5 would be negative 15. Negative 15, or 25 minus 15 is 10, and 10 minus 10 would in fact equal 0. So we see that it works for the first factor, or for the first solution. Let's see if it works for the second one. So if we stick 2 in there, so 2 squared would give us 4. 3 times 2 would give us 6. 4 plus 6 is 10. Minus 10 does in fact equal 0. So we can see that both of these solutions work. Now we want to write those in set notation. And we use a comma between them to show that this is represents the word or. So this would read the set negative 5 or 2 is a solution to this equation. All right, let's move on to a couple more examples here. So we can see that this equation here has already been set equal to 0. So how would we factor this? Well, when we factor it, we see, and you can either use the box method, or you can use the diamond method, or if you saw me do the distributive property method, you can use that method as well. Okay? So when we factor this, we would actually see that we have x plus 1 times x plus 3 equals 0. Okay? So set each factor equal to 0 as the next instruction. So we'll do x plus 1 equals 0, or x plus 3 equals 0. All right, so let's see. What do we get here? Well, we need to solve each equation, so let's subtract 1 from each side, and over here we would subtract 3 from each side of the equation. And when we do that, we see that x equals -1 or x equals -3. So our solution set would be -3, comma, -1. Now this is not required, but I usually write my solution set with the smaller number on the left and the bigger number on the right. In some of the exercises you may see online this week, they may ask you for the lesser x value and the greater x value. So you need to be conscious of that. Okay, so let's take a look at number 2. So number 2, let's see, this one's not coming to me quite as quick. So let me go ahead and factor it like we've done in the past. So let's see, if I multiply a times c, I see that that's going to be 24x squared, and that has to add up to 11x. So let's see, I believe that's going to be a 3x and an 8x. All right, so if I use the diamond method, that would mean I would have an x over 3 and an x over 8. And since I can't simplify those, that would give me x plus 3 times x plus 8 equals 0. Yes, I moved fairly quickly through that because that is a review of something we did last 3 classes. So if you need to go back and review your notes or any videos on that, go right ahead. So let's see, let's set each factor equal to 0. So I would set x plus 3 equals 0, or x plus 8 equals 0. And then I'm going to solve each one. So for the first one, I'm going to subtract 3. Here I'll subtract 8 to isolate the x. So my first solution is x equals -3. My second solution is x equals -8. And so our solution set would be -8, comma, -3. Okay. All right. Need to see another one of those. Let's go ahead and do maybe 1 or 2 more very quickly here. Okay, so here my a times c is going to be -2 x squared, and my b is 1. So let's see, that's going to be a -1 times a +2. Because -1 times +2 is -2, -1 plus 2 is +1. So that would be 1x over -1 and 1x over +2. So my two factors are x minus 1 times x plus 2 equals 0. Again, I'll set each factor equal to 0. And then solve each one. So for the first equation, I need to add 1 to both sides. For the second equation, I need to subtract 2 from both sides. So for the first equation, x would equal +1. The second one, x would equal -2. So my solution set in curly braces would be -2, comma, 1. And there you have it. Okay, let's take a look at number 4. Again, let's draw our x here. So a times c is -27 x squared. My b is 6x. When I explore the factors of -27, which this looks like a problem we did last week, we would find that it is going to be -3 times 9 is going to give me -27. -3 plus 9 is going to give me 6x. So let's see here. I would have an x over -3 or an x over 9. Neither of those ratios can be simplified. So my two factors are x minus 3 from the first one and x plus 9 from the second one. We'll set each factor equal to 0, like we've done in the previous examples. And then we'll solve. So let's add 3 to both sides. And here we would subtract 9 from both sides. So that's going to give us x equals 3 or x equals -9. And so our solution set would be curly braces, -9, comma 3. Okay, so on your homework tonight, I need to see all of this work for you to get credit. Hopefully this was helpful to you. If it was, click the subscribe button and also click the bell or thumbs up, whichever the case may be, to receive notifications when I make more videos and post them. Thanks guys for watching. I hope you have a great day.